Okay, welcome back, guys. So we're starting with we'll be learning the first one we'll be learning in CS in sorry in Bootstrap today. We'll be learning what we call container. Let's do what we call container. Now, if you notice when I wrote this, you see that this starts from the very beginning, like no margin, no padding, and some other things. So how does container works? Container, they're used to pad the content inside of them. They have kind of a margin to the left, margin to the right, and just like a container. When you have a container, you can put something inside. So we have a class called container in Bootstrap. The class allows us to have enough padding margin that we need for our page. Just like when you have your notebook and they've actually draw a line that, sorry, your Microsoft Word, you have a place, you have a line where you cannot write, you have a line where you can. That's an example of what container looks like. So how do we use container? We have two type of container. We have the container fluid and we have the container. Now the container provides a fixed width container, while the fluid provide kind of like a full width. It's not as okay, let me just demonstrate so you understand, so that I won't start speaking too much English here. Okay, so for example, if I say div and in my class I say container, now inside this div I have h1 that says welcome to web class. So let me use the first class we'll learn then, that's text danger. So if I save this, if I come to here and I refresh, you can see where my welcome to web class is starting from. It's starting from here. So it's because of the container. The container pad this place, and if I keep writing, it will get to a particular place there. It will stop. Let me make this a bit more. Okay, so let me come in here. I refresh. You could see when it gets here, it stops. That's because of the container. Now you see in our previous lesson when we were learning CSS, we have to do margin right, margin left, padding right, padding left. So with container in Bootstrap, once you put container as your class, you don't have to do margin right, margin left, margin pad, margin this and that. Okay, let's see how container fluid works. Now container fluid is a full width, though there's still some little padding, but not as much as container. I believe we understand this. So not as much as container. So let's see. Let me use the P class. So note that mostly you use container with your div class because it's meant to be like a container, just the way the name inclines, container. So if I come here and I refresh now, you can see my P class because I'm using it with container fluid. So if I choose to use container, if I refresh, I have this. Okay, so that's one of the things we'll be learning in what's it called in Bootstrap. So another one we're going to learn is, I want to call it the grids. So we want to learn the basics of the grid. So what is grid? What do I mean by grid? Should I explain grid now? I should move on. Okay, let's go on. Since I've mentioned grid, let's start with the basics of the grid and let's see how the grid works. So what happened? How do we go about the grid? What is grid itself? How does it work? Okay, this is how grid works. Let me open my drawing pad here. Okay, I'm trying to get my paint up to explain grid. Okay, now grid is like we're trying to divide the page into various sections. Remember, in our last section, we created a particular place where we need our services. We needed 3 services. Remember, don't mind my drawing. We had something like this. If you remember, we had 1, 2, 3. Yes, that was when we were learning CSS. So we had 1, 2, 3. That's so. Imagine you want like 10 here. Let me not say we just want like maybe 5 or 6 boxes here. We want we probably will render more than 3 services. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 4 at the top, 4 at the bottom. So that's what we call grid. We're trying to like divide the pages into smaller portions. We want to place something on it. So how do we do our grid in Bootstrap? So grid has the first thing we do with when we're dealing with our grid is the row. You know, we have when we deal with table. Let me just quickly let me write a table so that we can understand what I'm trying to say. You know, we have table. Sorry, I just want to use this to explain, not nothing than that, just to explain. So if you come here and say td that td this, so if I come here now, if I refresh, okay, let me make the border to be equals to 1. So padding equals to 2. So if I refresh this, sorry, I think okay, sorry, I actually didn't divide the table. So rows, table rows, so I'm supposed to do the same for this. tr, and come to the head and close this table rows. Now these are rows, these are columns. Now before we can have a grid, we need to define a row. That's okay, this row, then in this row we want to have columns. So this is 1 column, 2 column. You understand what I'm trying to say? So that's what we're about to do now. So how do you go about this? So the first thing, the class is simple. You say div, you say class, then you say row. Now, after you declare the row, then you now come and start declaring your columns. Now, in Bootstrap, our web page, this our web page can be divided into 12 columns. That is column. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you can say, so how do we now divide them? Let's just go straight to the point. I say class, I say col. If I say col1, that means take one portion. Let's go to second one. Okay, let me give this h2 so that it will be so obvious. Copy this here. You can see we have Adela here. This one is taking 1. This one is taking 1. That means we still have 10 extra, 10 places that we can divide these stuffs. So if I try to bring, let me copy, let me paste here. Sorry, I'm not copying well. Okay, so if I copy and paste here, now we've made 1, 2, 3, 4. I want us to get to 5, 6. Now if I come in here, you will see 1, 2, 3, 4. So we still have 6 to go. But let's say I want this to take 6 portion. That's 6, that's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That will be remaining how many? 1. Can you see this is taking 6 spaces? Assuming I want to divide it into 3 places, that will be 12 divided by 3, that will be 4. So this will be 4, this will be 4, this will be 4. So if I save this and I come here and I refresh, can you see I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the way our what's it called? Our grid works. So like our previous example when we were building our website, we could just use this to define our images and our text instead of having to go and write style saying display flex, blah blah, and this or this. It's still the same thing, but this Bootstrap have written all these classes for us. I believe you understand what I'm trying to say. Okay, so let's stop here now. Our next class will go more into grid. We'll cover full grid. Grid is still more than this, so we'll cover and get done with grid. Then we'll move to the next thing. So thank you very much. See you in the next class.